and report. So perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, and Roz and Diane, thank you very much for officially making sure that we have the quorum that's stated in our bylaws and other reasons. So I wanted to start off with that. So I'm going to go ahead and mute myself, and I'm going to hand this over to Rabbi to speak first.
Thank you, Amy. And it's so good to see everybody. It's been way too long. So we've been through 2 very difficult years. Norms that we thought existed, ways of life we took for granted have been shattered. Interestingly, in this week's Torah portion, Ki Tisa, Moses comes down from Mount Sinai, and seeing the Israelites dancing and worshiping a golden calf, he shatters the tablets of the 10 commandments that he has just received from God. He's going to have to go up again and get another set. Now, the Midrash, which is rabbinic interpretation, tells us that the shattered tablets are just as holy as the whole ones. Indeed, both the broken fragments and the non-broken tablets were kept in the ark. For indeed, there is something to be learned and gained from brokenness. At the High Holidays, I shared with you some of the lessons that you learned from the first year of the pandemic. Today, I'd like to talk about what the Jewish community learns from brokenness, because we have faced tough times all too often. And we're still here. We survived, and we even thrive. What we have done is to adapt to new circumstances once we have emerged from the pain. When the temple in Jerusalem was destroyed in the year 70, the rabbi's world was shattered. The temple represented the place for God to dwell. It was the center of the world. It was traumatic, but the rabbis did not stop there. They recreated Judaism with a focus on prayer, study, and acts of loving kindness. And that's what we've done and will continue to do as Jews. The pandemic has sent us to huddle in our homes. So what do? We reinvented worship and what worship looks like. And we transformed Zoom into a sacred worship and study space. Of course, we've missed each other's company, but we've kept together as a community with this virtual world. At this point, it looks like we will be able to reemerge and come back to in-person worship in a few weeks. We're thinking probably mid-March. But we won't be the same, and that's okay, because the Jewish landscape has changed, and so must we. In my report to the congregation, I shared with you a few articles about what is happening in the Jewish world right now. All our institutions are rethinking their priorities. It's no longer your grandparents' world. You can build a shul and Jews won't necessarily be coming through the door. Now, that doesn't mean there will no longer be a need for synagogues, but it does mean that we need to reimagine what a synagogue is. I am thrilled that the ever creative, ever dedicated Jory Yarmoth is heading a vision committee to toss around ideas, some of which we'll adopt, I hope, and some of which we'll toss. The time has come for some really deep thinking and some really deep dreaming. I hope that we'll all be able to keep an open mind as we go through this very necessary and urgent process. I want to thank the board for steering us through this most challenging of times. I want to thank and say goodbye to those who are departing the board and to thank them for their service. I particularly want to mention Eric Lesser, who has tirelessly attended to our landscaping and who accomplished the seemingly impossible, redoing our bathrooms. I also want to mention and thank Rusty Russell, one of our most dedicated board members. Rusty was the president when I was here 16 years ago as an interim. He's always been on the board when I have served as your rabbi. It will be really difficult to think of the board without Rusty's presence. I also want to thank our outgoing president, Amy Pearlstein, who not only served as president over the 2 years of the pandemic, but also had a bat mitzvah in the middle of it all and had to reinvent what teaching 6th grade looks like during this crazy time. Thank you also to our wonderful staff, Susan Tenenbaum, whom we will miss dearly, and Hannah Wilkerson, who has been doing a super job in the office. Thank you as well to Andrea McNellis, our educator and our administrator. who painstakingly brought our office into the 21st century with all sorts of technological advances that were sorely needed, and whose energy has animated our religious school. And most of all, thank you to all of you for sticking with us and for having confidence in our mission.
All right. Thank you, Rabbi. Appreciate everything. We're going to go on to, and you're already getting some chat messages, Rabbi. I'll let you look at those. We're going to go on to our Board of Directors slate for 2021 year. Of course, it was headed by David Crone and his nomination committee, and you've all received the names and their positions. And what we need to do now is vote to approve. And we have a couple of options. You can put your hand up, maybe on a table, because it may need to stay up for a while so we can take voting and count accurately, or you can use that reaction button and have your hand up that way. Either one would be fine. So if you could go ahead and vote to approve.
Amy? And we see the list of the new officers, Amy? Amy?
I do not have that up. It may take me a couple minutes to get that. Just a moment.
There was a link for it in the email this morning.
Right, I just don't have that open.
Amy?
Yes.
Seeing nobody raising their hand to nominate anyone else in
Correct.
opposition to the slate, I was going to move we just accept the slate by acclamation.
It would be the entire slate for sure that we are looking at, absolutely.
No. I want to just make a motion that we accept it by acclamation, not worry about the vote, since there's no opposition.
Okay.
Is there anybody who's willing to second that?
I see a few. Kevin Aiken, I saw you first.
I will second that, Roz.
Thank you, Sandy. Appreciate it. Much appreciated. Okay, we will move forward
Now,
with that.
If there,
Thank you.
Amy, all you have to do is ask if there are no objections. If
Yeah,
there
I'm
are,
just looking on my screen real quick. I'm just looking on my screen real quick. Just a moment. I want to give an opportunity. Okay, are there any opposition to that? Okay. I'm screening this as well. Okay, perfect. Then it's approved. Thank you very much to all the Temple family for working with this. Appreciate it. And now I'm going to pass this back to Rabbi for some words and a special blessing.
Okay, so I would like to ask for,
I see it, okay.
you're okay, Roz? I'm gonna ask for the new members of the board to sort of raise their, everyone else can put your hands back down so we can just focus on the new board members.
Oh, here it is, okay.
Do people know how to, you have to go down to a reaction place and take your hand down. Okay, well, that's not working. All right, everybody has their hand up, whatever. Okay, so
Hands down.
Hands down, there you go. All right, so just so people know who is being voted in as the new board. Did you ever find the slate, Amy? Okay, so we have David Crone as.
Sorry, I stopped looking. Go ahead.
I'm going to try to do it from memory. David Crone is going to be our new president.
Mhm.
Our vice president is going to be Jory Yarmoff. Yay, they're all clapping. That's a good start. Religious practices is going to be Jason Winston. Christine Liepman is going to continue as our, what's it called, treasurer? Finance, no, something, I can't remember. Finance? Okay, what's Tim then?
Finance.
What's Tim? He's the treasurer.
Mhm.
Okay, so Christina's finance, Tim is treasurer. Open Arms is Doug Moss, a fairly new member of our congregation. Open Arms is Tiffany Ferris. Facilities is Avi Lavi.
No, Rabbi. Tiffany Ferris is fund development.
Oh, I'm sorry, fund development. You're correct. Lori Magnus you're still on the board, right? As sisterhood rep?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, somebody found
Oh.
the thing. Thank you. Okay, Kevin Aiken is going to continue as senior Havurah representative,
Mhm.
and Lori's going to continue as sisterhood representative. And let's see. And
Kevin
Sherry
Aiken.
Cruz is coming back on our board as secretary.
Mm.
And social action, we are going to continue with Sandy Nelson and Adam Whitmer as youth group. Thank you very much, Jason, because I'm sure I wouldn't have remembered all of that. So just so everyone knows who I'm blessing right now. Okay, you can take that down, I think. Okay. Now all I see is a big black. Are you still sharing your screen? No? Okay, there's something wrong with my, I think my
There you
cat,
are.
I think my cat unplugged my Ethernet because I've been having a lot of trouble today. So please, if I freeze, you'll know why. I'm going to offer the priestly blessing to you. Yevarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May God bless you and keep you. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yechuneka. May God always be a shining presence in your lives, and may you always be kept safe. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May you always have the greatest blessing of all, the blessing of shalom, of peace, and of shalem, of wholeness. Amen.
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 Okay, thank you, Rabbi. All right, David, go ahead and mute. I'm off.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. This little bandage is because I had a little cancer removed a couple of days ago, but it's the kind that you don't have to worry about. They told me it's the very best kind to have, so nothing to worry about. This is, well, I want to start by just thanking Amy Pearlstein, exiting president. She came in just as she was starting. It was year one of the pandemic. And then her second year was the year that we hoped everything would get better, and it became year two of the pandemic. And in the middle of this, she was a mom, and she's also a teacher, and teachers had to completely redo their classrooms and teach online. And on top of that, it was very demanding being president of the temple during a time where we were introducing new ways of worship led by our rabbi, but also safety concerns that all had to be worked out in a time where we really didn't know what the right thing to do was all the time. And so she's really been a phenomenal leader. She leads quietly, but she's organized and stays on top of things. And it's really an honor to follow her, as well as all the past presidents, many of whom we've wrestled into participating in our temple in other ways, and I'll be talking about them in just a minute. But thank you. Thank you so much, Amy. And of course, I have to thank the rabbi, who, as you know, will be starting her well-earned retirement, not this summer, don't panic, but the next summer, 2023. And the rabbi has led services online and in person, sometimes one or the other, sometimes both. That's required a lot of flexibility and a lot of creativity and a lot of leadership, something she couldn't do alone. She worked with Nick Guadagnari, Jory Yarmoff in getting the equipment in place. So it was a team effort, but a team that she led from the pulpit and sometimes from home. She has, so she's found ways to lead us online and in person. She's found ways to make B'nai Mitzvot possible when it seemed impossible. And our family personally benefited from that. And she's also actively thinking about the future of Temple Bethel, even as she wraps up her time as rabbi over the next year and a half. So thank you, Rabbi. Let's see, mentioned past presidents. And looking in the future, we do have a vision committee that, as Rabbi mentioned, Jory Yarmoff is leading. He's going to be considering how are we going to be presenting ourselves in the future? What is Temple Bethel going to look like? I mean, to me, Temple Bethel is this community. It's these people that I'm looking at right now. but how we're put together and what the future is going to be, how we're going to be being in the future is something that Jory and his team are going to be considering. And I would welcome those of you who have ideas to reach out to him. It's not all happening right away. It's going to be a process, sort of thinking about these ideas, but we are doing that. As far as my presidency, I hope to be leading us out of this pandemic. And I will take full credit for that if it works out, but none of the blame if it doesn't. What we're looking at on the board, and what I would like to stress, is security, and membership. And we have that already underway. Security for health, that we have a COVID committee that's been ably led by Jason Winston. And as we have been developing, and with active participation from congregants who are involved in health professions and otherwise. So it's been a very active committee, very responsive committee that Jason has led, because our health is, of course, very, very important. We need everyone to feel safe. And because of what happened in Texas a number of weeks ago, security is once again physical security. And so we're going to be looking at how we configure ourselves physically, if there's anything we need to change with respect to how we engage with the public in order to protect ourselves from terrorists who may want to interrupt our operations. And Rusty Russell is going to be heading that. He's going to chair a committee that's going to be looking at physical security. And then membership. We have members coming at us from very many different perspectives. We all share a love of Judaism, but some of us are seniors, some of us are families, and we have different interests, different tolerances for risk. And we want to serve everyone. And we want to serve everyone together and serve them separately as appropriate. Membership is our future. We need to build and retain members just so we can keep our finances straight, but also our members, that is our community, and we want it to be healthy. The rabbi's been leading in that. She's been leading Introduction to Judaism classes, and we've gotten some new members that way. But I think we also need to do a more robust job of reaching out to our community. And it's really challenging, but we need to do it. And Doug Moss, who is relatively new to our community, you may or may not have met him. He's gregarious. He's going to be our membership chair. He's a school superintendent, longstanding, knows how to work with the public, knows how to build organizations, and we're really very fortunate to have him there. So I'm only mentioning a few of our board members here and a few of our activities, but everyone is, of course, very important. This is also going to be a time of renewal because we have extensive changes in our personnel. We're searching for a new administrator, a new office assistant, a cantor, a religious school educator, and eventually a rabbi, but not right away. And so it's troublesome to lose people, but it's also exciting because we are renewing, and we can, as we envision who we want to be and how we want to be, who we pick to work with us and to lead us is going to be very important. And I think it offers a real opportunity. So those will be our activities over the next year. And I look forward to working with all of you. Thank you. And I was about to hand it back to Amy, but I just realized I'm in charge of the meeting now. That's why Amy is jumping up and down and clapping her hands. All right, but I can't hand it off. I can hand it off to the very experienced and wise Tim Bell, who's our treasurer, and will now do a budget report. Tim?
So we can go over the results from last year a little bit, and then I can take any questions and then go over the budget. Can we put up the report? Is that possible?
I don't have
I'm
it.
opening it, but it might take me a minute.
Okay, I don't have those controls, I don't think.
All right, well, we can just go through the results. As far as dues go, we can thank you all very much because our dues were very much in line with what we budgeted. And our general donations were quite a bit more than we budgeted. So that's good considering we lost the rental income from the churches. And we were able to get another PPP loan from the government, helped us out quite a bit. You can see that was 37,000. So considering COVID and the problems that that's presented, we came out pretty well. We only had to use about 30,000 from the Rabbi Tamid Fund. We were able to save some money through personnel. We didn't have without meeting in the temple, we didn't have a real need for a janitor, so we didn't have one. So overall, not only having to use 30,000 from the Tamid Fund, that's pretty good. And we have in reserves, we still have roughly 170,000. You can't see that on the budget, but we do have it for future use. So the budget is pretty much in line with what actually happened over the past couple of years. We are including increases in payroll to allow the cantor search. I think those are all the main points. And I'll be glad to answer any questions if anyone has any.
Let's see, could we see the,
Melissa McKeith had a question in the chat, so I don't know if she's able to do it. She says, how has the budget changed over the past 5 years? What do we calculate will be needed in the next 3 to 5 years? My cursory reading is that we need about 500K annually. Is that correct?
That would be true if we had a cantor and a rabbi. So that it depends on how the payroll shakes out as we find personnel to fill in.
But she's asking about, next 3 to 5 years, what are we going to need? How has the budget changed? Over the past 5 years, what do we calculate will be needed in the next 3 to 5?
Again, it depends on who we hire and how much we're paying them. So there's a lot to be determined in the next 2 years to see what's needed. We can, as I said, we do have reserves, and we have the Tamid Fund that helps us pay for the rabbi's salary as needed. So we are pretty well set for the next three years at least. Last year, we didn't have any fundraising or very little fundraising to speak of. So thanks to COVID, that we didn't have a major fundraiser. Hopefully this year we'll be able to have one and receive revenue from that. But over the major change from the last 5 years was losing the rent from the churches. And then over the next 3 to 5 years, it's going to depend on our payroll situation. So I hope that answers the question.
So one question I had was just, and partly because have been a member of the temple for 2 to 3 years now, but have not been, it's been COVID, so it's hard to really know what's happening. So in an ideal world, if we have a budget in the $750,000 range, is that really what a goal would be if we were looking at kind of long-term sustainability for the temple?
And that's in line with Dennis Brandt's who put in the chat that 500K is a conservative estimate. So
Because if we had a full-time rabbi and a cantor, even part-time or full-time, probably in the $550,000 range is what we'd be looking at.
And then I guess one final question, and that is just on membership. Are we seeing a decline? Are we seeing a leveling out? It seems to me that we're very sensitive to membership in terms of dues. And
interesting.
Yes, our membership has stayed relatively stable. I think we're around 210 families.
Great.
we're not that anymore.
Between 200 and 210.
No, we're between 180 and 190. Sorry to have to contradict.
Are we?
you, but yeah.
Wow.
We're at 191.
That's gone down then over the past year.
The idea of looking at what budget we need to sustain ourselves and how many personnel we can afford, over the next 5 years is one of the things the Vision Committee is going to be looking at. So it's possible that we are going to determine that we're not able to have a full-time rabbi and a full-time cantor, or better still, we'll figure out ways of bringing in more revenue so that we can. But those are some of the questions we're going to be looking at. But we're certainly okay for the next couple of years while we do the work of figuring out where we're going to go, in 5 years.
Thank you.
Are there any other
you agree with
questions?
me, Tim?
Pardon me?
I said, I hope you agree with what I just said.
Absolutely.
Question?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
The membership going down, is that a representative indication of what the relevant broader community, or does that mean that there are more people who are not getting involved in the Riverside area? Does anybody know?
I'll tell you what I think. It may not be correct, but this is my assessment. First of all, there are a number of people who have left Southern California because it's too expensive to live here. I mean, we've lost a lot of people just from that alone who said, I'm moving to Oregon, to Texas, to wherever. Second of all, the new generations, the millennials and Generation Z, are not so interested in institutional Judaism. There are now a lot of alternatives to joining a synagogue. There are online communities, there's smaller, sort of more creative communities, people doing a lot of, if you look at the New York Times page on weddings, a lot of people are getting married by their friends, not by clergy anymore.
Yeah.
And so people are doing things like having bar mitzvahs in their backyards and getting married by a friend and whatever. And so they're not, they're not so interested. Now, young people in their 20s traditionally haven't, necessarily joined congregations. They usually wait until they have kids and everything. But the trend is not to join synagogues as much as it used to be. I mean, that's the sort of what's going on in the Jewish world, which is, very sad. And then I think younger people don't identify as much with a specific group. Like I'm kind of Jewish, but I'm also maybe a little bit Christian and a little bit Buddhist, and and the largest number of people that, the group that's expanding the most are those who identify as none, N-O-N-E. I'm spiritual, but not religious.
Yep.
So those are some of the reasons that this is happening. It's not just, we are not at all, out of the ordinary. I think some of the synagogues that are in larger Jewish population centers, some of them are doing okay because there are more Jews, there are more resources. We don't have a lot of resources out here, and we don't have a lot of Jews. So those are all factors, unfortunately, which is part of the reason for the Vision Committee, is to see, how can we be relevant to those who are interested in pursuing their Jewish identity.
Excuse me, Rabbi, don't you think that people are affiliating less in the Christian world too?
That is absolutely true as well. Absolutely. I'll tell you where the big numbers are. It's more in the Orthodox world, believe it or not. More people are being drawn to the Orthodox world. And I think that's true also in the Christian world. That's always been the problem with liberal religion. Once you say, okay, the Torah does not come from God, it comes from human beings. And it's like, well, what's the authority anymore for doing anything? It's always been an issue. And so, the same thing for Protestant churches. A lot of them have been closing and merging, and, there's merging going on in the Jewish world as well. We're down, it used to be that there were 900 something Reformed synagogues. Now they're 800 something. So it's a problem throughout the whole country. It's a whole different sort of gestalt out there.
Could I add a comment as well?
Sure.
Just working in the office, knowing how aged our congregation is, we have lost so many wonderful, beloved congregants in the last couple of years. So the aging out of our congregation too has affected the numbers. So now that we are under 200, we never used to be under 200. And just one other comment about the budget. You can't ignore the effect of the Child Development Center also having reduced income the last 2 years of COVID. Their enrollment wasn't affected. They were shut down for many months. And, we get facility usage from the school income that way. So that has been curtailed as well.
Absolutely, Susan, absolutely. And the aging of the congregation is throughout the country. Chris Peterson said there's been discussions this past year about additional collaborations with Congregation Emmanuel. What are plans for that in 2022? So we have talked to Emmanuel. Emmanuel is down to about 100 families. Once upon a time, they were at about 600 when they were in San Bernardino. So they're suffering the same, more than we are. So we have been in conversation with Rabbi Resnick, and one thing we're going to do is March 18th, which is coming up fairly soon. We're going to do a joint Purim service and spiel, and it'll be at our temple. So that'll be great. And I'm hoping that also there's going to be a Purim carnival there for the kids the weekend before. So I hope that we'll be collaborating on that as well. We've also talked about ways that we could try to their religious school is down to 10 kids. Ours is down to 20, by the way. When I first got here, there were 60 kids in our religious school. So they're down to 10, literally, so we're talking, are there ways that we can, work together? The problem is, of course, the extra 20, 25 minutes of driving either way. And so we know that that's something parents aren't too thrilled about. So we haven't said, oh yeah, let's merge the schools and we'll, do 1 week, one place and 1 week, the other place. We're looking into the possibility of maybe doing more field trips that, they don't have to go to one place or the other. They can go into the field and do stuff. So we're talking about ways in which we can work together. And, we'll just have to see. They're also in the process of trying to figure out, can they keep their doors open, really? So that's going to determine also how we collaborate. Oh, Ron asked, is cell tower income ongoing? As far as I know, yes, right, Tim?
There's no change there. The cell tower, they're still leasing, and we receive annual income from it.
So, as I said, almost every synagogue, especially smaller ones in areas like ours, are going through the exact same thing. So it's not us. David has his hand up, I guess. David, you want to go? David Cronenfeld?
You have to unmute.
Unmute. I don't know, because I'm not involved in, I'm one of the old people and I am but not the salvation here, but given the size of the Jewish population, which seems from what you say not to be nearly as tiny as our shrinking slice of it, I wonder if there's some way to shift some of the public emphasis, the interaction with other Jews, public with other Jews, to a kind of community orientation. And when I was a kid, the synagogue that I belonged to in Miami was the Carl Gables Jewish Center. Back then, rather than calling itself a synagogue, it was, I don't know if it was Reform or what they called, it was liberal, it was religiously, who knows. But it was a way of emphasizing the community aspects of the Jewish community in the region. And religion was part of that, but religious observance was not the only focus. And I'm just wondering, I'm an outsider, I'm not in this, so nobody has to listen to me, but I just thought I'd ask that kind of question. Thank you.
Somebody want to
We don't have any plans for that at the moment. We do have conversations going on with the Jewish Federation of, let's see,
San Gabriel,
San Gabriel Valley and Pomona. And their principal concern is if they have to throw in Inland Empire, it makes their name really, really, really long. But seriously, that is one of their concerns. But they reached out to us, and they see themselves as targeting that mission, but not doing it alone, doing it together with us.
Yeah, I mean, I've also been in conversation with clergy in the area who, are also struggling with all this stuff. And, we're trying to see, again, I think one of the solutions that, and I see Sandy and Regina both have their hands up, and there's a question from Diane in the chat, so I'll get to you guys. So one of the things that synagogues have been doing is more collaboration, especially since we do so much on Zoom. We can offer joint adult ed services, which we've been doing with some other synagogues. We did a series on aging with the synagogue in Ventura. The synagogue in Calabasas has offered us to, join in on some of their Saturday morning study sessions. So that's something that we're talking about and doing more together as a Jewish community. Of course, again, the distances are problematic. Pomona is not so close, but we're doing what we can. And again, with Zoom, that really, helps a lot. So Diane had asked what effect has Chabad had on our community?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what effect it's had. I don't know that we've lost people because of Chabad, but I can tell you that Chabad is incredibly enterprising. And we could learn a lot from them and the reform movement in general. They have raised enough money to build a building. I mean, that is pretty astonishing. So I don't know if anyone has any other thoughts about Chabad. I think some people belong to both, and some people belong only there, but I'm not sure they would have joined us anyway. So Sandy and then Regina.
My question is whether it's directed basically to Tim. Have you heard anything from the churches at all? Are they talking about coming back? And the other thing I wanted to say was just, it seems to me that, isn't it the evangelical churches that are actually doing okay, those mega churches?
Yeah, although I just read a really, and then I'll let Tim answer, but as far as the evangelical churches, I just read a really interesting piece in today's New York Times by David Brooks. I got the digital version, so I'm not sure whether it came out yesterday or today, but anyway, it's very worthwhile to read it because he's talking about there being quite a bit of dissent in the evangelical churches. They're upset about the political or the politicization of Christianity that's occurred with the evangelical churches. And so I'm not sure how strong that whole movement is at this point, as far as, you know, drawing people away. I think there are a lot of people leaving. I don't know what the balance is, but there's some issues in the evangelical movement. So I don't know, Tim, do you want to answer Sandy's?
So we had two churches that met at our facility, a small one and a larger one. The small one unfortunately closed up. They weren't able to continue through COVID. The bigger one is waiting for us to allow them to come, and we talked about it at the COVID committee, and they authorized me to go ahead and talk to them now about starting back up. So that's where we're at there. They've just been waiting for us to allow them to meet. They don't want to have require their members to wear masks and be vaccinated. They feel like that would hurt them. So we have to work all those things and how we let them come back. But I'm going to be talking to them. Yes.
Thank you very much, Tim.
How much does it bring in?
Wait. Regina was next, and then I don't know. I heard, was that Marcia and then Rosalie?
Sorry.
I just wanted to make a comment on the membership thing. In terms of our religious school, one of our biggest classes, or if not the, I don't know the exact numbers, or might be the biggest class, is our youngest kids. So we have a lot of younger kids coming in and their new families. And that's wonderful because, you know, I could name a bunch of families that have 4 kids that moved out and, you know, 3 kids that moved, you know, all these big families seem to have moved. But to have the new younger kids coming in is really great.
That's a good point, Regina. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Marcia? I assume that was you.
Sorry, I just had okay, never mind. Anyways, how much does it bring in to have the church annually?
We're getting very little from the small church, but the bigger church was around 40 to 50,000, depending on how many times they could meet.
So we need to balance that against COVID issues, I guess.
Would there question?
Wait. Rosalie was next, and then Judy. Rosalie and then Judy.
A couple of questions. For Tim, first of all, what was our income from the legacy fund?
Legacy fund is not income to our general budget, but it was about $9,000 that we could allocate towards whatever they vote to approve.
Huh. I thought it was a budget item. And I am reminded of, we mentioned our aging community, that an appeal for funds might be appropriate soon. That was done, the legacy fund was established some years ago. And just a question about the school and the increase in enrollment. I wonder if that could be because of the location here of the Air Resources Board and the fact that they have so many technical personnel. And maybe we could make some kind of a direct appeal to them from the temple so that they're aware of us.
Doug, are you listening? Go appeal to the Air Quality Safety Board or whatever they're called.
Yeah, no, I think that's a big part of the question, and part of what we're going to be looking at is, you know, I mean, this kind of ties into the different organizations, the different groups, the different communities we have within our bigger, broader Riverside area, assistance and looking at ways of tying together Jewish communities, which the Jewish Federation can certainly assist with, even though we are kind of far out of their reach. But it's looking at those different groups and how do we get people interested in what we currently offer, but also what we could potentially offer in the future. And that might look different from anything that we may have done in the past. So I think it's a combination of all those as part of where vitality is going to come in. And it's part of our unique times.
So Judy,
Just a
Kevin,
minor question.
hang on, Judy, Kevin, and then Steve, just because I want to make sure you know that I see you, even though I'm not really in charge of this meeting.
I
Sorry,
just had
David.
a really minor question, a very trivial question. It's for Tim, and well, for anyone really. Assuming, as is very possibly the case, that we have some form of COVID for some time, what is the situation vis-a-vis negotiating with the church? That is a lot of money, $40,000 or $50,000. But if they do, I mean, are they unconditionally refusing to, wear masks? Because I just wondered if that would affect cleaning costs or something like that in the temple. If there's any policy for the COVID committee, that's relevant there. I mean, does it cost a little bit to have them come if we agree to allow them, or will we agree to allow them?
If I could just answer that real quick, Judy, and
Sure,
then I don't want to, I
so minor, but I really
keep
want
us too off other topics, but it largely comes down to having our people there at the same time on the Sunday school and protecting our people if their people don't want to follow the same protocols, and how do we manage that? So I think that's where we're going to have to figure out how to keep our people safe and not restrict them from coming at the same time. And that's just,
I see. So that's the focus here. Okay, thank you.
We're working on it.
Kevin?
Yes, I just wanted to emphasize that most of this stuff is under our control. When we're predicting the future, we need to take into account what we're willing to do and what we know how to do. We can do the recruiting, we can do the fundraising. Nobody, despite pandemics and despite changes in demographics, this is stuff that we can do. We need to do whatever's necessary to maintain this center for our Jewish community and keep it healthy and keep it active. So predicting the future is not so important. What's important is affecting and changing and improving the future. Now, I would point out that when we hired our present rabbi, we couldn't pay her full time. We said, well, we can't afford a full-time rabbi. And fortunately, she was willing to work part-time, at least for a start. But she was such an excellent rabbi that she became the fundraising device that enabled us to raise the money to pay a full-time rabbi. So let's make sure our next rabbi is of that character as well.
Thank you, Kevin.
This is all under our, it's not all under our control, but we can affect every bit of it. We need to do it.
Thanks, Kevin. Okay, Stephen.
I'm just wondering when the church people are really there, because but Jason just talked about they're there at the same time. My thought was, well, if they're there and they're gone for so many hours before we ever show up, how long do those COVID germs really live?
Stephen, they were showing up before the pandemic. They were there while religious school was going on.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that. I thought they were.
Yeah, so that's what we're
when-
trying to see if there's some way to have them come a little bit later and have maybe religious school start a little bit earlier or something, so that there's enough time between the two. Well, actually, we don't have to worry about us being there first, but just making sure that they're not there at the same time or in the same location.
And I just thought they were there and gone. It's like, okay, just make enough hours between them and then us. But if they're there at the same time, I guess that's irrelevant.
Yeah. So, okay. So I'm just reading what's in the chat. So,
Rabbi, could I?
Sure, please.
Yep,
Please take over.
yeah.
Take over.
I've been going to a lot of committee meetings, and all of these ideas and questions are wonderful and real and important. But I do want to reassure you that all of the topics that we've been discussing are being discussed in the committees. Some of your questions are related to things that were just brought up. This is breaking news in our committees, but we are paying attention to these questions. And you may want to, if you have questions, find the people who are directing the committees and maybe even participate, because the committees are, open, people can attend. So all of this stuff is under discussion. Are there any unrelated, I don't want to get too down into the weeds on specific issues today with the whole congregation here, but are there any general questions that anybody wants to address before we move on?
Yes, David. Me.
Yes, Cantor Bob.
Hi there, everybody. Hey, I have a question. It's based upon your comments earlier, and that is, you said there's a search for a variety of positions. Why is a search for a new rabbi not necessarily on the table? And what's the rationale for that?
The rabbi is leaving in a year and a half, and these other positions that I mentioned need to be filled immediately.
Yeah, specifically, I guess something's close to my heart. You're searching for a cantor more immediately than you would a rabbi, or to get a good rabbi for a congregation who really is the heart and soul of a congregation and who is really the true leader of a congregation. Takes time, takes effort, as many of you really well know. So the question is, how long are you going to wait until you form a search committee to find a new rabbi? Because many temples I'm aware of, when they find out that their rabbi is leaving, they do it 2, maybe even 3 years in advance if they're given the opportunity.
Yeah.
Maybe I can answer that, Bob. We are searching for a cantor now with the idea of having some continuity of clergy, and you were kind of the inspiration for this. So, we went through a lot of rabbis and we had one cantor during that whole period. So the idea is if we can get a cantor on board now, at least there'll be some continuity while there's a change in rabbi. And we're leaning towards the idea of hiring an interim rabbi while we do our search.
Yeah, I appreciate the compliment. I really do.
Yeah.
The issue is that we're listening to the concerns about the number of congregants in the congregation, members in the congregation, financial concerns, how much money will be in there in the future. There's a question earlier about what do we look like 3 to 5 years down the line, how much money is necessary to run a congregation. To have a cantor who's going to be part of the community needs to be paid X number of dollars, which is not a cheap venture. And to get a worthwhile rabbi is also not an inexpensive situation. So between those two people, and then if you want to get an administrator as well, assuming that we're going to evolve out of COVID and we'll be able to be in person more, seems to be quite a financial challenge for the next few years. And my personal thought, and I don't know if it's anybody else's thought, if you're going to put real money into really good use, try to find the best possible long-term rabbi that you can. The issue is, we're in Riverside, California. Riverside, California has always seemed to be a difficult place to place rabbis, and also it's it seems to be potentially a stepping stone to a larger congregation. But if you can find the right person for the right amount of money, for the right motivation, it'd be really worthwhile. I understand the issue about the continuity of cantor, but you'd have to have a cantor who perhaps would be willing to live in the community and be paid a living wage that they don't necessarily have to have other positions or other jobs.
Okay, well, thank you, Bob. I appreciate your thoughts there. The discussion as to whether to hire a cantor and whether it makes financial sense is one of the discussions we're having. But I like that your emphasis on the rabbi and focusing that is a very important suggestion. So thank you very much for your thoughts. I think I saw Melissa McKeith. Did you?
I have a hand up. Just very quickly, is it possible for the committees to be posted so we know when they're going to happen, particularly that we're on Zoom? I agree with you, David. There's a lot of issues. I think you see a lot of pent up demand for people wanting to speak. But I think part of it is I don't personally know when do committees meet and how to get notice. And it's
Mhm.
just a way to also engage more people in the community broadly, because if we could zoom in or knew about things in advance, committee meetings, it just means more people may communicate.
Sure. I don't know that there's a general posting of all the meetings, especially things like COVID meetings, which have to be scheduled sometimes on short notice as things develop. But certainly you can reach out to the chair, call the office, and I'll talk to Andrea and see if we can think of a way to post those meetings, and sooner rather than later.
Right, I understand. I know I'm not going to be arguing about the Brown Act. Don't worry, David. But I just think, if the committees meet once a month, if people knew it's the third Thursday of the month, that would be something we could just put on the regular bulletin as a drop-down menu.
Sure. I think if you have not all of the committees meet that often or regularly. A lot of it's ad hoc. So it might be, depends on the issue. It really depends on the issue, but you can also go through you have the list of officers and go through them and find the particular topic that you're interested in, and then contact that chair. And that way you may not even have to have a meeting. You could just contact the chair directly, because we're all here to represent our community. Anything else?
Susan Levine raised her hand.
Go ahead, Susan. Thank you. I don't have the best setup here to recognize people.
That's fine. I agree with Bob about getting the search committee going, because there'll be several steps the congregation might want to take. For example, a survey of all the congregants for the kind of attributes you would like to see in a rabbi or a cantor. And from there, to compile a brochure or electronic flyer that can be disseminated wherever it is that that Jews look for rabbis. I don't really know, but that's going to take probably at least 6 months. So I think the search committee should consider that.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Is it anyone else? I don't want to cut anyone off. Okay, Tim, did you have anything you wanted? This was actually formally your session. Did you have any concluding remarks?
No, I think we covered everything.
Okay. We kind of blended in the next one. The next section is called Questions on Reports. We did talk about fundraising, so I do want to mention one thing. You can all go onto our website now and fundraise directly through the website. Andrea set that up, and it's very easy to use. And I would urge you, should you feel generous, we are honoring Rusty Russell and Eric Lesser with leaves. They just found out about it with this statement that I just made right this instant, for their many years of service. The rabbi mentioned their service, and I want to reiterate it. Rusty, of course, was president. He's held many offices for many years, and this is the first time he's not been on the board in recent memory. And Eric, of course, has kept the building intact. I don't know if you've been to the temple lately, but when you go in the bathroom, it's going to be a very different place. So, and that was not an easy lift, but he pulled it off. So we would like to recognize them with leaves.
Excuse me, David.
Yeah.
Point out about the landscaping, please. The landscaping.
The landscaping, and Eric is going to continue to help with the landscaping. Avi Lavi is taking over the office, but Eric is very committed to landscaping and has indicated to me that he wants to continue to participate in that. Thank you, Lori.
And he's there on Sunday mornings very often, weeding and cutting and doing all of that.
Yeah.
And Friday afternoons.
So you are all hearing why he deserves this honor. And if you would like to support the Leaf, you can go online and make a contribution just directly into the temple through the webpage. So I just wanted to get that in. We're now moving on to questions on reports. And we're not going to go report through report. You have a list of, I don't know if this needs to be put on the screen. I don't have the ability to do that, to put the agenda on the screen, but we have the list of the chairs of the various committees for the past year. And this would be a time to ask questions of finance, our past president, facilities management, open arms membership, religious practices, religious education, fund development, which has not been filled, but is filled this year. Our senior Havara, sisterhood, TBE, CDC, social act, and youth groups and administrator. Now, this is the question on reports for things that we did on the past year. It isn't necessarily the time to introduce considerations for the coming year, although you could do that. But technically, we're talking about the reports that have already been filed that are available online and that you received links to. So does anyone have a question on any of the reports that were submitted? Does anyone, Rabbi, do you see anyone? I see a chat. Thanking Andrea. Okay. Well, if I don't see any questions on reports, then I just can raise a question. Is there any old business? And normally you'd say new business, but it's not on here. But I'll throw it out there. Is there any new business? All right. Well, if they're not hearing anything else, last chance before we adjourn. Yes, Rosalie.
I just
please.
wanted to thank the board members for taking such time to prepare their reports. I found them very, very helpful.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Okay. All right. And Susan's reiterating her desire to know when committees are meeting, or reconfirming Melissa's comment. All right. Well, thank you all. And hopefully this is going to be the year that we climb out of COVID. We can't count on it, but we can keep hope alive, as they say. And thank you for electing me president. I hope to do you well.
I'd just like to thank again Amy Perlstein for her wonderful service the last 2 years. It's been an incredible time to be president, and she's came through with flying colors. So again, thank you, Amy.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Here.
Ditto, Amy. Ditto.
Thank you.
Thank you to
Oh.
everyone.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Great.